are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in love. We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in love. We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in love. Love, 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 joined together, together in love. Love, 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 joined together, together in love.
All right. Now we'll sing together in joy.
We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in joy. We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in joy. We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in joy. We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in joy. Joy, 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 joy together, together in joy. Joy, 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 joy together, together in joy.
All right, let's join together in peace.
We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in peace. We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in peace. We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in peace. We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in peace. Peace, 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 joined together, together in peace. Peace, 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 joined together, together in peace.
Let's do it in love one more time.
We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in love. We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in love. We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in love. In love now. We are brothers, we are sisters, joined together in love. Love, 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 joined together, together in love. Love, 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 joined together, together in love. Everybody sing joy together. Oh, joy together. Oh, joy together. Oh, joy. Join together, together in love. Join together, together in love. Join together, together in love. Join together, together in love.
All right, we're going to take a moment for an opening prayer, so I invite you just to get to a prayerful place, to close your eyes and to breathe deep and to just settle into the seat in which you're sitting. Right now we sit in a room of people of like mind, of like intention, of like purpose. Seekers of joy and happiness and light. We are surrounded by a supportive energy, uplifting, encouraging, inspiring, and empowering us. And we're so grateful that the divine presence of God has allowed this to happen. That it pours through each and every one of us as we sit here today, simply because we had an intention to be here, open and ready to grow. We set that intention by moving forward, by making the journey, by coming through the front door, and by sitting in this space. It's a powerful intention, the intention for growth. So this morning we hold on to that deep into our core, ready to learn, ready to grow, ready to expand, and most importantly, ready to share it in fellowship with those around us. And with gratitude, we go forth and we say, Amen. How are we all doing today? You know, I do that every time. You still just give me this lackluster response. No matter how many times I've trained you, I've offered seminars and classes after service on how to respond. Still nothing. I'm not going to give you a second chance. I'm going to make you sit with that. You're going to have to sit with that. Okay. No guilt. Here we go. Here's our words of wisdom from Gandhi, who said, "Morality is the basis of things, and truth is the substance of all morality." So to recap, 2 weeks ago I gave a talk on morality, and in this we played with a thought experiment that involves a trolley. And just like last time I spoke about this thought experiment, I want to apologize for the morose content of the experiment. It's not my thought experiment. It's actually a very famous thought experiment that many of you probably already knew. But in the end of this thought experiment, we were left with this final choice. Would you push one person off of a bridge to stop a trolley that was about to take the lives of 5 people further down the track? would you push this one person taking their life to stop this trolley that was about to take the life of 5 people? So this choice led us to discover that even though we know it is probably best to sacrifice one life for 5, in this study, when they've done it time and time again with thousands of different people, they found that 9 out of 10 people will not push that person. They don't actually put them in a real scenario. It's a thought experiment. Remember that. Thought experiment. 9 out of 10 people will not physically push that person, that one person, in order to save 5 people. And the reason being, we have something that Princeton researcher Josh Green calls the inner chimp, which I introduced last time I spoke. The inner chimp is like the inner child, but the inner chimp is our inherited sense of morality that comes from thousands of years of evolution as animals and primates before we evolved into becoming human beings that we are today. Or you might say devolved into the human beings that we are today. This inner chimp is our basic moral compass, as you might call it, that reacts independent of our conscious mind, right? It's independent of that. It doesn't care what the conscious mind thinks. It's independent of that. But it only reacts, it only speaks up when it recognizes a situation that is similar to something it has experienced before, similar to something it's experienced in the last few thousand years. So in the example of the bridge that we just had up there, it tells us not to push the other person because it has thousands of years of experience where something bad occurs when it pushes another chimp out of a tree. Something bad happens. So now it has thousands of years of experience that says, do not push a friend, do not push a loved one, do not push a stranger, do not push anyone into harm's way. So that's what speaks to us when we're in that scenario. It tells us not to push, even though our logical mind, given enough time, would calculate the scenario and say, but it's better to sacrifice one to save 5. So what we are dealing with here are really the fundamental building blocks of human morality, which have been built over thousands of years of evolution, which, if you are familiar with the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, part of the Hindu scriptures, if you've ever dove into those, Patanjali lays out 8 steps to self-realization, or 8 steps to awakening, also called the 8 components or the 8 limbs of yoga, and actually sometimes also referred to the Eightfold Path of yoga, sort of like Buddha's Eightfold Path. So this is sort of what it looks like, the 8 steps to awareness and enlightening. And the first 2 of these, the first 2 on the end there, are considered to be the foundations of morality. They are the pillars on which the next 6 steps will be built. And until these 2 first steps of morality become part of our daily living, and until they are mastered by us, until they are a strong foundation, one will continue to struggle with the next 6. So if you've been working on some of these higher areas in there and you're still struggling with it, there's a high likelihood you have not built a strong foundation in the very first 2 steps. Now, before we move on, please excuse my pronunciations of these words. I know my Sanskrit is a bit rusty in this incarnation. Every time I say a Sanskrit word on screen, I always hear this. Someone's correcting me on how I say that. Man, it's harsh. All right, so I've said my excuses, so here we go. The first 2 steps, or the first 2 components, are yama niyama, known as the do's and don'ts of yoga, the restraints, don't do, the observances, do. Who put that up there? That is so unlike me. I would never disrespect something like that. So actually, each one of these has 5 individual techniques or practices to master before moving on. And depending on the translation of yama niyama that you get into, they are slightly different depending on where you look them up. But we'll go with what was on the first slide we looked at, actually. So there are these. Yama, the first, are non-harming, truthfulness, non-stealing, conserving energy, non-greed, and then for niyama, it's purity inside and out, contentment, austerity or will, self-study, and surrender. So we have 10 fundamental steps on how to live. Does that remind you of anything from the Old Testament? So if you were thinking I was going to go deep, I'm not going to go deep into those steps of the 10 Commandments or of Yama Niyama. My goal here is not to go in depth into those. It was actually just to simply make you aware of them as the foundation for further spiritual growth. So if you saw some of those up there you're struggling with, you still got some work to do before you move on. And given our current trolley experiment that we're talking about, you might say our inner chimp exists in these initial moral steps or moral codes. We have Yama and we have the 10 Commandments, and in both they say non-harming or you shall not kill or murder. So those are built into that primal moral code. You could say our inner chimp sort of exists in that realm, and that's where it's speaking from. This is the fundamental code by which we need to operate in order to live this life in a civil and healthy manner, in order for us to get along, in order for us to move together. These are the basic building blocks of any spiritual path. And the master and spiritual teacher, Jesus Christ, spoke to this when he was asked if what he was teaching. So when he arrives on the scene in the New Testament, he has all these new teachings that were not in the Old Testament or the old way. And so he was asked, do these new teachings you're presenting here, do they replace what we grew up with or what we knew for the last few thousand years? Is what you're telling us replacing the Old Testament? And so he responded to that. He said, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. So he's speaking to the law and the prophets that came before him. He said, I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Here he is stressing the importance of learning and mastering the basics of morality, the basics of the Old Testament, before trying to rush on to the more esoteric and spiritually advanced principles that we all want to get to right away. He's saying you've got to master the basics before you can move on. And these basics, in a nutshell, come down to this. Don't be a jerk. Has anyone ever met a spiritual jerk? I'll tell you as a minister, you meet quite a few. For example, if I was an unintuitive who could also meditate for hours on end, and I could astral travel, and I could quote any spiritual text that has ever written, but yet I'm still a jerk about it, what have I gained, or what have I actually learned? How have I actually grown if I'm just using all of this knowledge to be more jerky? There are fundamentals to living that must be put into practice before we can really progress further. And the Guru Paramahansa Yogananda says, all religions agree to the need for such a code of moral and disciplined behavior as a foundation for religious practice. To meditate without simultaneously practicing yama niyama is like building a giant structure on a weak foundation. Yama niyama are the basic principles of every religion. However, one cannot find God by morality alone. So there is a basic morality that each of us needs to learn to tap into, to master, and to learn to live from on a moment-to-moment basis before we can progress down the path. But all of this, hopefully, also shows us that this basic morality is not the end goal, but rather just the initial steps in the process. If we have not even mastered basic morality, we're still only in step 1 or 2 of the spiritual process. So for those of you that thought you were further down the line, I apologize for making that realization for you. So let's get back to our trolley example. I mentioned that 9 out of 10 people against their own logical reasoning, choose not to push that person to save 1 over 5, or to take 1 over 5. But this is very interesting. There are some people, when presented with that scenario, that exact same scenario, with that situation, they don't hesitate a beat to say, yes, I would push them. And this was fascinating to researchers and fascinating to me. And this is something that Princeton researcher Josh Green, that we mentioned 2 weeks ago, and that we're going to also hear from today, he discovered this, and he speaks about this in the podcast Radio Lab that we introduced last time. Now brace yourself, because this is about to get weird.
Now here's something kind of interesting. He and others have found that there are 2 groups that are more willing to push the guy off the bridge. They are Buddhist monks and psychopaths.
There are not too many occasions where Buddhist monks and psychopaths show up in the same sentence. So as you can imagine, when I heard that, my ears perked up, and I said, Buddhist monks and psychopaths, you guys better explain yourselves. And they did, and here's what they said.
Buddhist monks and psychopaths.
I mean, some people just don't care very much about hurting other people. They don't have that kind of an emotional response.
That would be the psychopaths, whereas the Buddhist monks, presumably, are really good at shushing their inner chimp, as he called it, and just saying to themselves,
You know, I'm aware that that killing somebody is a terrible thing to do, and I feel that, but I recognize that this is done for a noble reason, and therefore it's okay.
Now, Josh Green was the one speaking last there, and he hits on some very important key points in his explanation. So let's take a look at what he said is going through their awareness as they make this decision. He said, I am aware that killing somebody is a terrible thing to do, and I feel that. But I recognize that this is done for a noble reason, and therefore it's okay. Buddhist monks, they are aware of everything that is going on in their body and is going on around them. They are aware of the situation. They feel that the inner chimp says, no, don't harm another. They feel with their basic moral code that this is something they should not do, but they recognize something beyond basic morality or primal instinct. They recognize the realm of something noble. They recognize something that's a higher calling than either of those. Now, before we go much further, I need to clarify something. This is just a hypothetical thought experiment. And in no way is it ever okay to harm or to hurt another physically or mentally. Can we all accept that as adults? Okay, because I don't need anybody coming up after me and saying, Shad, I can't believe you condone this type of activity. Not my thought experiment, not my circus, not my monkeys, as they say, or my inner chimp. Okay, so we know that it's not okay to harm another or do such an activity, not only because our inner chimp says it's not okay, but it's written into the 10 Commandments. It's written into Yama Niyama, which are thousands and thousands of years old, that have been tried and tested to be true. Because until we have, well, and the point is, what we're talking about here, it's imperative that we understand this applies to us. We don't kill, we don't harm another. So as this lesson applies to us today, that is imperative for us to understand. Because until we have mastered that, until we have mastered the basics of morality, nothing more is really relevant to us yet. It's all just conceptual. So we're going to play with the realm of conceptual today, because the only thing that's relevant to us sitting here as mortal humans is we need to master the basics of morality. We still harm other people, mentally and physically. So the reason I'm bringing this up is to point out that there is something more, something further reaching and more expanded than just our personal concept of morality. So we're going to dive a bit deeper now, and I invite you to hang on while we listen to the words again from our master teacher. Here he is having a little chit-chat with his disciples. This is in the book of John 16, says, I came from the Father and have come into the world again. I'm leaving the world and I'm going to the Father. His disciples said, Yes, now you are speaking plainly, not in any figure of speech. Now we know that you know all things and do not need to have anyone question you. By this we believe that you came from God. You see, Jesus so often spoke in allegory or parable or metaphor that his own disciples really had no idea what he was talking about. They had a hard time following along in his message. And because of that, time and time again, you'll see it in the New Testament, Jesus actually rebukes them for not even understanding some of the most basic elements of his teachings. So here they are saying, oh, finally we get it. You, Jesus, know all things. Of course you would, because you, Jesus, are the Son of God. Now we can comfortably believe in you, Jesus, because you are a special and anointed person in a way that we are not and never can be. Now, as you hear Jesus' response in the next passage, remember how many times he's had to rebuke these people for not getting the most basic of his teachings. Jesus answered them, Do you now believe? Can you just hear that tinge of frustration? I know I put a lot of sass on it, but that's how I hear it. The hour is coming, indeed it has come, when you will be scattered, each one to his home, and you will leave me alone. Yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me. I have said this to you so that in me you may have peace. In the world you face persecution, but take courage. I have conquered the world. You see, as I hear it, Jesus is frustrated with these nincompoops. Frustrated because they still don't understand, and frustrated because we today still don't understand. And above all, the primary reason he is frustrated is that this is not even Jesus speaking in this passage. This is the Christ speaking. This is the higher awareness in all of us speaking. This is your personal spark of the divine that is sitting and resting with inside you right now, saying, listen to what I have to say to you. Oftentimes when I talk to people that feel like they're well read in the Bible and they share with me a passage, I say, was that Jesus speaking or was that Christ speaking? And they look at me like I've lost my mind, but yet it's very clearly laid out. These are two different things. So listen to this now. We're going to go through this again as the voice of your own higher awareness speaking. The voice of your Christ consciousness speaking directly to you. I came from the Father and have come into the world. Again, I am leaving the world and I am going to the Father. His disciples said, You say, yes, now you are speaking plainly, not in any figure of speech. Now I know that you know all things and do not need to have anyone question you. By this I believe that you came from God. The Christ consciousness, your higher awareness, is one with the infinite. It is only associated with a body as a soul for a lifetime. As a soul in a body, the soul forgets its divine origin. And then our small, disconnected consciousness says, oh, now I get it. This body is me. And out there is the infinite, the divine consciousness. God is out there, and I am this body. And the Christ consciousness in you responds, do you now believe? The hour is coming, indeed it has come, when you'll be scattered, each one to his home, and you will leave me alone. Yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me. I have said this to you so that in me you may have peace. In the world you face persecution, but take courage. I have conquered the world. Do you now believe? your belief, your faith, falsely lies in some power outside yourself, somewhere out there that's going to solve these problems for you, because you have forgotten the truth of who and what you actually are. And because you believe this body is actually you, and you also believe the Christ awareness is not you, you exist in a delusion, in a duality of hardship and scarcity and suffering that will scatter you on the shores of further suffering. Because you've bought into this dualistic concept that you are a body, I am a body, and this Christ awareness, this divine, is something else out there. We leave Christ alone because we've forgotten that we have forgotten what we are. And by doing so, we have literally made suffering our home by believing in our disconnection. We're all scattering off to our home of our delusion, of our suffering, of our nonsense, because we believe in our disconnection from Source. But our inner Christ, our higher awareness, has not forgotten. It says, but have courage, I'm still here, I never left, and what I offer is unwavering and everlasting divine peace. You can continue to believe in the world of separation and live in the world of suffering and nonsense. That is your decision. You can do that. But when you are ready to accept this gift of peace by remembering who you really are, you will realize that this gift was already yours from the beginning. You following me here? I know it's a fair amount to take in. There's a lot going on here. So just buy the recording afterwards for twice the price. I recommend twice the price. You get a lot more out of it when you do it that way. So what does this have to do with Buddhist monks and trolleys? You see, the Buddhist monks are operating from a plane of existence of a higher awareness, or what we would call the Christ consciousness. There is no longer an internal struggle for them. There's no longer a stress, a worry, a fear, a calculation on what's best to do. There's not a hesitancy or a duality within them that is trying to figure out a solution, to trying to find out what is best to do. They simply live in a state of awareness, a state of consciousness that already knows what to do. Beyond the limitations and the perceptions of this illusionary world, they don't have to bring all these scenarios into the calculation because they don't exist in this scenario. And they have released the attachment to the outcome, no matter what it is. That means they have peace no matter what has happened, no matter what is happening, no matter what could happen, and no matter what does happen, they will still find and have peace. The same peace that any one of us can have if we choose to listen and remember who we are. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, in the world, Buddhist monks still face persecution. But take courage, they have conquered the world. And that is the truth as I experience it. We're going to take this into some meditation now. So if you're ready, if you can close your eyes, you can rest your shoulders, you can straighten your spine, settle into your seat. Bring your attention to your breath, allowing it to slow down, allowing it to relax the heart. Relax the muscles, relax the joints, the bones. Finally, relax the mind. Something beyond thinking what might be the right thing to do is just the thing to do. Without a calculation or a process, without a worry about ramifications and right and wrong. There exists a plane of just what to do. It is there, it is accessible, and the only distance between it and us is a misconception of who we are. There is an awareness that has all the solutions. There is an awareness that can bring peace to every situation. There is a process that exists and unfolds with ease and grace, that rises above situations, outcomes, scenarios, problems. There is an awareness that is what it is and sees beyond the muck and chaos that we throw ourselves into. How do we bridge this gap between where we are and what we think we are, to what we truly are and where we truly are? We begin by taking stock of our daily duties, our daily actions, our thoughts and responses. As simple as that might sound, is one of the most important building blocks of the process. Who and how am I showing up as right now? Can I be just a bit more kind, a bit more loving, a bit more giving, more considerate, more compassionate, more understanding? Could I open a bit more to what's really going on around me, outside of my limited lens of perception? Could I accept that there's no way that I actually know anything? Could I settle a little more each day into simply what is? Could I listen a little bit more? Could I take time for stillness more often? Could I consciously slow down when I catch myself rushing? Could I physically disconnect when I've thrown myself into the world of distractions? Could I use my willpower to say, enough is enough? I have a divine right to peace, and I claim it now. I am at peace. I am expressing and resonating with love. My life is a living example of the presence of joy. No matter what I think I see, I am truly abundant. I am in the flow, in the moment. every interaction I have brings me closer to a true awareness and understanding of the divine. Life is on my side, working for me, encouraging, uplifting, and empowering me in every single moment. I am a perfect expression of the divine, and though I stumble, I remember my source and move forward with confidence. I am, and I know that I am. And so as we go forth now from this meditation and this process, we hold on to this truth and to this experience. And we are grateful. So it is. Amen.
Dawn is breaking on a new day. Trees are waking in their own way. Morning rain is pouring down, and we keep spinning and round and round. Step by step, loving just the same as us. Breath by breath is the presence that we're made of. Step by step, feel the rhythm of the earth beat. Breath by breath, every time our souls meet. Meadow flowers casting shadows on the wall. All their petals on a rainbow by the waterfalls. Through the forest, we're standing true and tall. I hear the chorus of the wild cicadas are calling, calling. Step by step, loving's what sustains us. Breath by breath is the presence that we're made of. Step by step, feel the rhythm of the earth beat. Breath by breath, every time our souls meet. Lift your soul up high in gratitude, reaching towards the peace of solitude. We want to hear your voice come shining through. It's all up to you. It's all up to you. There is a trail up in the sky. It's in between the winds on high. And with the stillness of the deep, contains the love of all we see. Step by step, love is what sustains us. Breath by breath is the presence that we're made of. and the earth beat. Breath by breath, every time our souls meet. Step by step, breath by breath, step by step, breath by breath, step by step, breath by breath, step by step. Thanks, everybody.